Hello there, friends. This is Spencer Michaud, and welcome to your weekly forecast for the week of November 11th through the 17th. A lot of astrology to get to this week, like we do every week, but we've got some pretty big landmarks that we're going to be hitting this week, including Mercury's inferior conjunction. It's CAZIMI with the Sun, where Mercury comes into alignment with the Sun and begins an entire new Mercury cycle that will last for many months. So it's kind of a big deal. Also seeing some kind of a mercurial type eclipse with the Sun as well, transiting over across of the face. I think it's visible, which is not always a common occurrence. So it sounds like there's going to be some big stuff going on at the beginning of this week to pay attention to. We also have a full moon in Taurus with the opposition of the Sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus. So that'll be interesting. We'll discuss that. A couple other non-lunar aspects. Mars is going to be sextiling Jupiter from Libra to Sagittarius on Tuesday. And then we've got a couple aspects with Mercury on Wednesday, with Mercury retrograde sextiling Saturn, trining a retrograde Neptune, and then the Sun will be making its own sextile to Pluto. And then the last non-lunar aspect we've got is Venus making a square to Neptune on Thursday as well. Couple different planetary decans we're going to be dealing with. The Sun is moving into the third decan of Scorpio, which is represented by the Seven of Cups, and we'll talk about that. And then Venus is going to be moving into Sagittarius 2, 10 to 20 degrees Sagittarius, which is represented by the Nine of Wands. So some interesting things to get to. Essential dignities for the week. So the Sun will be moving through Scorpio 2, where it has decan rulership, or rulership by face or decan. Sorry, I'll try to spit my words out here today. And then when it moves into Scorpio 3, it doesn't necessarily have any dignity, so it's losing some dignity. Its ruler, Mars, is still in exile in Libra, which is not a comfortable position for Mars. And it is also in aversion now to its host, which means it is one sign away from it or in a blind spot. So it's very difficult for Mars to provide for the Sun this week. Mars itself is going to be moving through its own terms between 28 and 30 degrees of Libra. So that does give Mars a little bit of dignity, which means that it'll have a little bit of an ability to take more action or to be able to set its own rules or curriculum. But still not a super happy Mars. Let's look a little bit at this Seven of Cups here, where we're seeing the Sun entering into. Now, the third decan of Scorpio is a Venus-ruled decan. So there's going to be some stuff going on with a little bit of a Venusian color or a venereal coloration to our solar significations. You can see in this card, we have a figure that is being presented with many different choices and options. Perhaps they are floating in on the cloud of illusion. We have the choice for the pursuit of riches, the pursuit of fame, the pursuit of power, the pursuit of vanity, the pursuit of, like, I don't know, a stable home or something like that. Lots of temptations. And this may be part of the themes that we're working through in Scorpio 3 is how do we parse through our desires, the types of things that we want, and how we are going to be manifesting them, and what kind of choice are we going to make when we're presented with all these different options. And sometimes it may be releasing the desire for all these things too. I think Scorpio is that kind of releasing quality, right? Where we're kind of coming to terms with the inner direction, that the inner focus of Mars, the nocturnal type of Mars, right? Where we're kind of it's kind of that fall experience where we are letting go of things. The leaves are falling from the trees. We're kind of getting a, um, a feeling of slowing down, of composting the things that we've learned over the cycle. And perhaps this is a time where many of the choices that we may have been experiencing, where, they're coming either to fruition, or we're having to let go of some of the other options, right? I think this could be something that speaks to having some, many different options, but we can't pursue every path. And I think that may be one of the things that we're looking at here too. Now, when we bring Venus into the mix here, Venus is going to be moving into the second decan of Sagittarius, which we can see associated with this Nine of Wands. Now, when we have the Nine of Wands, you can see a figure that is, holding one of the staves or wands. Of course, the wands were associated with the fire triplicity, the cups with water. So we've got a water-fire kind of balance that's happening here. And this figure seems to be either preparing or recovering from a battle. He seems to be in a position, like almost like a power position, where he's like, maybe he's taken an injury, but he's ready to keep on fighting or defending his territory or his turf. And there's some themes of the hunter as well with Sagittarius in general. We've got the bow and arrow of the centaur, of the archer, and perhaps Venus is taking on more of an ability to pursue some of the things or the desires that it wants. It may even be where we're manifesting one of these particular things. This full moon is going to be in a very fertile sign of Taurus, and we're finally finding the earthly container with the Taurus moon for some of the desires that we've been, experiencing internally, or in some of the dreams that we've been having. They may actually start to take form, perhaps as early as Tuesday, when we're starting to see the full moon. That is an exalted moon too. If we're talking about dignities here, the moon is exalted in Taurus, where the moon has honors. There is an ability to be honored for the work that has been done. It's a very fertile area of the zodiac, where we're, I believe that it's been described in a word that was taught to me by Austin Coppock in his wonderful work, fecundity, which is the field that is ready to be seeded or plowed, or it's been plowed and it's ready for the seed to be planted, and it's got this fertility, and there's this great support for some of the seeded dreams that we may have had. So think about that, where we may be seeing the combination of desire, Mars, and receptivity with an earthly container, the Venus ruled moon in Taurus. Okay. Jupiter is still in its own domicile in Sagittarius 3. It has triplicity by the night, so it has the resources it needs. It has the wind in its sails in the evening, and we're moving through the last weeks here of Jupiter in Sagittarius before it changes signs and loses quite a bit of dignity as it moves into its fall in the Saturnian sign of Capricorn. So the Jupiter things are very well supported for the next few weeks, but they may be a little bit more difficult to manifest, or the rules are going to be changing. Now we've got all this hope, optimism, motion. We know what the dream is, and we're thinking about the sacrifices that may be necessary to achieve it. Well, when Jupiter moves into a Saturnian sign, get ready to work harder for that progress. Progress may have felt, not necessarily easy, but we're still feeling that forward motion with Jupiter and Sagittarius. And I think it's going to slow down a little bit, and we're going to be working within some limitations and growing within some limitations. So be prepared for that. I believe that Jupiter moves into Capricorn around the first week of December. Okay. Speaking of our old man, Saturn, he is still in the second decan of Capricorn, which is ruled by the card, the Three of Pentacles. In that card, we have observed over the course of different video explorations, a blueprint, figures that are making a plan, that are thinking about how to build for the long term. And this may be something that we're still experiencing that is very strongly supported in the Capricorn area of your chart. Again, I encourage you to look at your whole sign natal chart and see which house is being activated with these different planetary placements. The Sagittarian ruled area of your chart is getting a boost of optimism and hope and bridge building and abundant support. The Capricorn area of your chart is getting a reality check and is getting support from Saturn to work within the limits that you've been given. It's giving you the limits, but it's also giving you the perseverance and the ability to endure some of those limitations. And like I said, Jupiter's going to be hanging out with his buddy, quote unquote, Saturn, for for about a year. So like Jupiter transits are roughly a year and some change, and that's going to be a lot of what 2020 is going to be about. Is that Jupiter in Capricorn and Saturn conjoining Pluto, and Saturn moving through the end of Capricorn itself. Okay. The other planet that we have, non-lunar planet, is Mercury, which is still retrograde. It is in its own terms this week, 11 to 19 degrees of Scorpio. Mercury has rulership by term or bound. That's the similar name for the same thing, where Mercury is getting to set the curriculum like a middle school teacher for our communications, for our ability to promote ourselves in a way as a merchant may, or in our ability to parse things out in our intellect. Mercury is slowing. Okay, it's very slow right now. We have a very slow Mercury, so we have to. You can see, like, sometimes when I do these videos, I'm like jabbering away. Today, it's like a oh man, it's like a Herculean effort to get the words out of my mouth, and I'm gonna credit Mercury with that today. Um, so this is kind of how it goes. You're fighting through layers and layers of I don't know, emotion, of fatigue, of lethargy, to even just get the words out of your mouth. So forgive me for that, and we'll do the best that we can, right? Uh, but yes, Mercury is slowing down. This Mercury is coming. They compared it in the Hellenistic text to a person taking to their sick bed when they were coming under the beams of the sun and becoming closer and closer to the furnace of rebirth. Mercury will get a boost. It will get like a renewal when it goes into the heart of the sun on Monday, 11/11, which seems like a very auspicious date if you're into that kind of thing. There's some New Age theories that say 11/11 is the universe saying yes, and the opening of the channel. I mean, you can see that the symbol itself is kind of looks like an open channel, so to speak. Like you can see the two things kind of with something coming through it. So really pay attention to what is going on Monday. Before I get to that, and I'll expand on that a little bit, let's just talk about the moon real quick before we get past our essential dignity report, our roundabout essential dignity report. Moon's going to start off exalted in Taurus. It'll have triplicity in the nighttime. The moon is the ruler, the triplicity ruler of the nocturnal, in the night, of the earth signs by night. It has dignity by face between 10 and 20 degrees, or the second decan of Taurus. So it's extra fertile around that period of time. The moon will be peregrine when it moves through Gemini, which is said to be wandering or without dignity. When it moves into Cancer, it will gain dignity by domicile and have access to all its own resources of nurturing and of being able to manifest things into form and fertility. And it will also have dignity by face because it is the decanic ruler of the third decan of Cancer at 20 to 30 degrees Cancer. And then at the very tail end of the week, it'll move into Leo, where it is peregrine again. Okay. So moving forward to Monday, we're going to start off on a gibbous phase. And a gibbous phase is the lead up to the full moon. It's the one of the eightfold phases. If you look at Dane Rudyard and Demetra George, they talk about this eightfold division of the moon, and I believe each phase is roughly 45 degrees, and this gibbous phase goes up from 135 to 180 degrees before that opposition, right? So we're going to be seeing the lead up on Monday. The moon is going to be falling under the bond. This is another Hellenistic technique that we talk about, where the moon is weakened by being within 15 degrees of either a conjunction with the sun or an opposition with the sun. So this is something that we are, feeling, where the moon is going to feel a little weakened. This is it's called, what was my note there? Sundesmos, I believe that's the Greek word. I could be wrong. My writing is super small, and like I said, my brain is working mercurially slow right now. But we're going to be seeing the first aspect of the day is the moon making a conjunction to retrograde Uranus. Let me actually share my screen here so you can see these things happening. Okay, so here we go. This is Monday, and we're going to be checking out this moon as making its conjunction with Uranus at about 4 degrees. So that's the very, very early hours of Monday. We're probably feeling that at the end of Sunday here. I'm recording this on Sunday, the 10th. And, we're going to be getting that little jolt of electricity that we've been getting when the moon makes contacts with Uranus. Some kind of new form is trying to take shape. Some kind of disruption to our material containers and our routines and our resources is being triggered Sunday night, and we're trying to kind of parse all that out. And that's going to be part of this full moon that we're experiencing, because anytime we have a lunation now with Taurus involved, we're going to have Uranus be a part of it. And remember that the moon started its new moon cycle in Scorpio, conjoining at about 4 degrees of Scorpio opposite Uranus. So we may see something triggered from that new moon coming into fruition late Sunday evening and early into Monday morning of this week. Okay. The real big news of Monday, though, besides all that, is that we're having the conjunction, you can see this here, of Mercury and the sun. Okay. I'm going to annotate this and see if it'll let me do this. Hold on, let me make sure I get it. There we go. There it is. I went too far. Okay. So at about 18 degrees, we're going to see Mercury being exactly conjoined to the sun. And this happens as Mercury is going retrograde. This is called the inferior conjunction of Mercury and the sun. Now, because Mercury and Venus have fairly regular retrograde cycles, they will approach a CAZIMI with the sun from the inferior position, okay, coming in from primary motion, okay, and they will be also making an approach from this direction, which is the secondary motion, when they are direct. Okay, so that's called the superior conjunction. They make a conjunction as morning stars during the superior conjunction and as evening stars from the inferior conjunction. Now, there are some authors that have arguments on this, but most of the authors that I've read believe that the inferior conjunction of the inferior planets, being Mercury and Venus, okay, the superior planets this is outside the orbit of the sun from our perspective. And the inferior planets are the ones inside the perspective of the sun from our our perspective, or the orbit of the sun, sorry. The inferior conjunction is said to be the beginning of a new cycle from many of the authors that I've been reading, including Demetra George. And so this is a very important day. I don't follow the news a ton, but even I am aware that there may be some pretty important things going on in our government beginning on Monday. I believe it may be the very beginnings of the official impeachment proceedings of President Donald Trump. So that seems to be a pretty significant omen in the sky of some kind of initiation of some kind of cycle. Now, the last inferior conjunction that we had was on July 21st at 28 degrees Cancer. So if you want to kind of test this out, review your chart and look at the Cancerian area of your chart, if by whole sign house, and see if over the last 4 months or so you had some kind of mercurial experience through that particular area, and what began? What did you just resolve over the last few weeks? What was coming to an ending over the last few weeks? I know that, like, if I just share a little anecdote, my daughter just ended her high school swimming season, and she was starting to get kind of involved in that season at the end of July, and all of the stuff that may have been manifesting through that. She had her final meet with the high school team this past weekend. This is another reason I'm dragging today. I've been inundated with screaming swimmers and parents for 2 days in a row, and being slightly introverted, it's fairly draining. But it's fun. It was definitely fun, and she did really well, and I'm super proud of her efforts, and she's doing really good. So, but now we're beginning a new cycle. So you see how, like, that's just a small example of a cycle that began at a conjunction, and then the completion of it as we're moving forward. So look in the area of your life where that may be happening, and look in the Scorpio ruled area of your chart now to start to get an idea of what kind of cycle you may be initiating for the next few months. Because this is going to be important. We're going to have another retrograde happening around February. So this is something that's going to last from now until probably the end of February, beginning of March, this new mercurial cycle. There will be another conjunction of Mercury and the Sun in between that time, the superior conjunction, but not for a while. At least I think there will be. I didn't take notes on that. Don't hold me to that, but that seems to be. Let's take a look. Look, we've got this beautiful program in front of us. It's one of those days, folks. I'm doing my best here. Okay. So let's actually look and see a few months from now when this will happen again. Okay. So we've got, so here's our superior conjunction happening in January. Okay. And that's going to be January 10th. Oh boy, man, there's a lot going on that day. So on January 10th, we're going to see the superior conjunction in Capricorn, 18 degrees Capricorn. That's the same day that we have roughly the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And it's also very close to a full moon eclipse that happens roughly 2 or 3 days later. So lots of astrology in the first or second week of January. Hold on to your britches, folks. But whatever you start now may have another kind of peak moment around the first or second week of January, and then it's going to be coming to a close. That cycle is going to start coming to a close. Let's take a look. This is the beauty of having this kind of thing here. Let's look. We've got, now you can see here, see the retrograde happening. whenever the planet on my chart is in red, it's retrograde. So we have a retrograde Mercury that's making its inferior conjunction again on February 25th, roughly. Okay. So this cycle goes from 11/11 to February 25th with a sort of full moon-ish type of experience in the beginning of January. So you can think of this sort of like the lunar cycle where we're experiencing the new moon of Mercury, quote unquote, on Monday, and it's going to culminate at a full moon of sorts around the beginning of January, and then it's going to be waning to the next new moon type of cycle at the end of February. Okay, does that make sense? Kind of neat to track these through the weeks and the months and things like that. Okay, all right. So, what does that mean, though? Well, it means that all of the old things that we were carrying with us through the previous mercurial cycle from the 21st of July are being burned away in the furnace or the flames of the sun and being reborn. So this is definitely a period of rebirth for our Mercury and for everything that it signifies. You know, don't just think about this as the Scorpio part of your chart, although that's where a lot of it will play out. Look at the Virgo ruled area of your chart and the Gemini ruled area of your chart, because Mercury is providing for both of those houses from this position in Scorpio. So those two things will be connected. It'll be important to see what kind of things come up and recognize that those themes are going to interconnect. So, for example, just on my chart here, I have a Pisces rising on this chart, just randomly. And it is, Scorpio is the 9th house here of higher learning, of long distance travel, of belief systems, of orthodox religions, of journeys that have a significant meaning. Okay. And the Pisces risings of you out there are going to be experiencing some kind of new start, and you're perhaps in the way that you think about your belief system, and it may be having a connection with your family of origin, which is the 4th house here, which is Gemini, and your partnerships, which is the 7th house of Virgo. Okay, so you see we have these connections here because it's going to be providing from Scorpio to those houses. Now, in this particular chart, I'll give you even a little other bonus here, Pisces risings. Mercury has a condition called an aversion to the 4th house. So it may have difficulty providing for the family because it is on one of the other two signs opposite on each side of the opposition, which is a blind spot. And the 7th house does have a sextile. So Mercury can witness the 7th house by sextile in this particular chart. So it will be able to provide for the relationship. So if I had to make a delineation here, and this is something, if you want a personalized reading, feel free to reach out. We can schedule something over Zoom, no matter where you are in the world. I would say to this client, you may have a start in your 9th house of belief systems, of long distance travel, higher learning, and it may be beneficial for your partnership, or you may have a partner that comes along that helps you in that area of your life, but it may put a strain on your family or on your relationship with your maybe something's happening with your home. So like in this particular chart, maybe the long distance travel makes some disruptions within the home, like, because that's where our foundations are. This is our our residence where we feel stable. So there's some interesting correlations there, and you can do that with your own chart too. This is something that you can practice with, but just recognize that at about 10:22 a.m. that's when Mercury is in the heart of the sun, and there are different authors that give different aspects with that. The Hellenistic authors said when Mercury was within 1 degree of the sun. The medieval authors narrowed that to about 17 minutes, which is just a portion of a degree. But really pay attention Monday morning, because there's going to be a new impulse that everybody's going to be feeling, And I want you just to take some notes about what happens on Monday morning, because that's going to be the seed of the new mercurial karmic cycle that's going to be unfolding over the coming months. Okay, enough of that. Tuesday, the 11th. It doesn't slow down at all. Let's take a look here. On Tuesday, the 11th, a number of aspects, but the main one, the big one of the day, is the full moon. And you can see that the full moon is happening when the moon and the sun are in opposition. And that is happening at 19 degrees of Scorpio and Taurus in the very final stages of the second decans of both of those signs. And earlier in the morning, the moon makes a sextile to retrograde Neptune. It's going to be trining Saturn in Capricorn, and then making an opposition with Mercury retrograde. So all of those things happen before the full moon perfects at 8:34 a.m. Now, this full moon is also trine Pluto. So we've got a number of players in the game of this full moon here. First of all, if we were to analyze this in a Hellenistic way, we would say that both of these lights are going to be in aversion to their hosts. So you can see that the sun here, its host Mars, is in poor shape, in bad shape, in Libra still. Although it is coming into its own terms, it's not there yet. It doesn't have any real dignity. It's still in exile. So the sun is kind of weakened by having a weakened ruler, but has no line of communication to it as well. Whereas the moon is also in aversion to its host, Venus. Now, its host is in a much better position because it is in its own terms. It is with the greater benefic Jupiter. It's sitting at the table with a benefic, which it likes. We're heading into this Venus-Jupiter conjunction, which is going to be a really nice moment. I'll talk about that towards the end of the week here. It's not happening yet, but it'll happen towards the end of November. If we had to analyze the condition, though, the moon definitely is in much better shape than the sun in this particular chart. The moon is said to be in its exaltation, a place of honor, a place of being at the top of the wheel of fortune. So something may be able to take form that may be, bring honors to. You may feel the culmination of some kind of project, or perhaps there was some desire that you had that is finally taking form. Finally getting reborn, like with Mercury here in the heart of the sun. Maybe there's some new start in that mercurial area as well. And it's going to be, maybe bringing you a new sense of power too with this trine to Pluto. It could be some kind of very deeply felt new start that is very structurally regenerative. Pluto has an ability to regenerate things. So maybe we've been struggling with some areas of our life that have been sort of dysfunctional, where maybe there's been some corruption. And this could be a new, kind of a new start towards something regenerative. Now, it's interesting. What I find interesting about this full moon is there's a lot of competing themes going on. This isn't like a very simple one. We've got the newness of the new mercurial cycle, but we've got the culmination of a full moon. So that's kind of a strange dichotomy, isn't it? Where we got this kind of new thing starting, but also something coming to fruition. Remember, the new moon that we were experiencing in Scorpio was on the 22nd of October. So we're going to be seeing kind of matters that began around the 22nd of October coming to a head, and perhaps seeing the light. Something is coming to light. Secrets may be coming to light. Things that were hidden coming to light. Things that we may have been hiding or working on behind the scenes finally coming out into manifestation, and they may not be necessarily bad. This is the thing with the moon there. Now, it may be a little bit shocking or unexpected because we've got Uranus in the mix too with the moon. We may think some of the things we may have been working on, we may have been hiding them so well with all this scorpionic energy that when we finally reveal what we've been working on, some people in our life are like, holy crap, we had no idea you were even thinking of doing that. So keep an eye out for that, and try to maintain your equilibrium if you are experience anything like that, if something happens to you, or even if you're revealing something to someone else, like, with this exalted moon, if you're experiencing a good shift or a fortunate shift, try to maintain your center and your humility around it too, because this is one of the dangers of an exalted moon. We can get a little high on our hobby horse, because we feel like, we're getting to the top of the wheel here, and maybe the people that you're leaving behind in that kind of less than ideal circumstance, you may feel a little bit of guilt, or there may be a little bit of envy or something like that. And it's important to kind of stay grounded if you're either making a move or experiencing someone else making that move. Either way, you have the opportunity to kind of maintain your center. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's my practical advice for the week is, enjoy the fruition of something, or, try to be graceful or gracious when you're experiencing those changes, whether they're happening to you or you are the one initiating them. Okay. What else? Another thing to keep in mind with this full moon is that we had a new moon in Taurus on the 5th of May. So this may be a culmination of something that was initiated that about 6 months ago as well. So take a look at those dates as well. You can take a look at the 22nd for a smaller culmination, or you could take a look back at the 5th of May for perhaps a greater cycle that's coming to fruition. And that may be instructive as to what kind of things you're working through. All right, the other aspect that's happening on this day is Mars is making a sextile to Jupiter. So Mars is at 25 degrees of Libra in its exile, making a sextile to Jupiter at 25 degrees of Sagittarius. Generally, when Mars makes a sextile to Jupiter, that would be something super positive, and it still may be. There may be something positive that is coming out of a difficult circumstance with Mars being in its exile. Generally, the connection of Jupiter with a positive aspect to anything is good. But it's not as good as it would be if it was from if both planets were in great shape. But this may be something that's helping Mars out a little bit by running into the bonification of Jupiter in Sagittarius. Conversely, now, if there was a difficult aspect between Mars and Jupiter, Mars would be the one harming Jupiter. But since this is a nice aspect, it's probably going to be more about Jupiter kind of helping out Mars a little bit. So look at the two areas of your chart, Libra and Sagittarius, and see where there may be something positive coming out of maybe something you've been experiencing really difficultly with the Mars Libra area of your chart. And it's going to be getting a little boost from that Jupiter and Sagittarius on this full moon day. Jupiter sextile Mars was associated with heroic quests, with exuberant energy, fortunate actions. The actions we take on this day may be better informed and lead to more prosperity than they might otherwise if we didn't have this aspect. It's really interesting. We may have some enthusiasm that it starts coming back into the mix with this aspect. Okay, so that's our full moon. We've got that. We've got this kind of very. If I were to show you another card here, we've got the 6 of Pentacles coming into opposition with the 6 of Cups. Okay. And the 6 of Pentacles is shows someone giving charity to the poor, right? This is got someone who is in a position of wealth or power, and you've got these people that are, in need and the ability to distribute that wealth. We've got a similar theme echoed in the 6 of Cups, where we've got the exchange of a cup with flowers in it. And we have, in the 6 of Pentacles, there's almost like an uneven power dynamic. Like one person is wealthy and able to distribute that wealth, where there may be a slightly more equal power dynamic in the Six of Cups. So interesting themes to think about there, but there may be something where a partnership finally is bearing some kind of fruit, or some kind of joint effort is coming into form. So something to consider with that. All right, moving on to Wednesday. Oops. On Wednesday, the 13th. On Wednesday, the 13th, the moon is going to move into Gemini at 3:46 a.m. Still going to be in the full moon phase, but the moon is going to escape its bond, or escape its 15-degree on either side of the opposition of the sun at about 2:15 p.m. at 6 degrees Gemini. So in this chart, it hasn't quite escaped the bond yet, but that's when the moon is going to kind of regain a little bit of its oomph and be out of that weakened position of being under the bond. And the Hellenistic authors discussed the first aspect that the moon makes after being under the bond can speak to some of the things we may experience. If it makes contact with a benefic first, there may be something really good that comes out of that. If it makes contact with a malefic like Saturn or Mars, there may be some more difficult circumstances. Now, the good news is the first aspect that's going to be made after the moon escapes its bond, the first traditional planet that it aspects is Venus. So it's going to be making an opposition to Venus in Sagittarius. So there may be something kind of good that's happening with the Gemini and Sagittarius ruled area of your chart after the moon escapes the bond. That's happening on Wednesday afternoon. A couple other non-lunar aspects happening on Wednesday too. Retrograde Mercury at 16 degrees is making a sextile with Saturn in Capricorn. It also, later on in the day, is going to be trining retrograde Neptune about 15 degrees. And then the sun is going to be sextiling Pluto at about 21 degrees of Scorpio and Capricorn. So a number of trines and sextiles at the same time that the moon is escaping the bond. Okay, so Mercury sextile Saturn. Generally, this aspect could enhance our mental focus, our ability to be disciplined with our thinking. We may have a little bit more pragmatism or well thought out communication. Now, Mercury is still retrograde, which is a debilitating condition for it. But remember, we're letting go of the oars and we're kind of letting the stream of our life redirect us. Now, as the moon is, or I'm sorry, as Mercury is escaping that CAZIMI, it's still going to be weak. Okay. So remember, if we say Mercury is like a person taking to its sickbed as it comes into conjunction, and then it's kind of gotten, I don't know, the medicine that it needs or some kind of treatment or rebirth. And then it's like somebody who is recovering from an illness and trying to walk again, but those first little unsteady steps. Okay, so it's not like you want to go run a marathon after you've been laid up with the flu, for 2 or 3 weeks, right? You want to kind of get your feet underneath you and get your bearings first before you kind of start moving quickly again. Mercury is going to be, gaining speed, but it's still moving very slow and very cautiously. So there may be some cautious mental discipline communications that are happening. The first seeds of that we're going to be seeing. With the sextile of the sun to Pluto, this again is going to increase our intensity, our drive, our could be an enthusiastic type of position, but it's also bringing light to some of the shadow things in our life. This may ignite some of our deepest either desires or shadow self, and it may be shining the light on those parts of ourself that maybe we remain hidden, that are bubbling underneath the surface. Maybe it's lending solar fire. Okay, solar fire is also an astrology program, but maybe it's lending its solar fire to the plutonic, lava and heating it up a little bit. So we get a little bubbled, we get excited. We might be really things might starting to brew under that surface, and in a positive way, hopefully, with the sextile, because the sextiles were easier contacts. This may be also speaking to the renewal and the rejuvenating aspect that we're of Pluto, and of, that we're seeing with Mercury kind of starting to come out of its sickness and regain some strength. Towards the end of the day at 5:34 p.m., Mercury retrograde is going to be making a trine to Neptune. So this is a positive contact between these two planets, but it also definitely has the possibility for misunderstandings or confusion. I think the main challenge with this particular aspect is getting a little bit too idealistic with your thinking. There's going to be, this is a very intuitive combination with these being in water signs. This may be a lot of nonverbal communication type of thing that we're experiencing, a lot of dreaming. This is really where our thoughts are really kind of really getting into the what could be the possibilities. And I think that it's also an enhanced placement for intuition, I would say too. But just be careful that you don't get swept away on the oceanic waves of the beautiful dream, because you want to use some of that Saturnian pragmatism that you've experienced earlier in the day, and keep one foot on the ground. You can dream a little bit, but keep one foot on the ground if you want to use all of these transits their most effective and most efficiently. Or, the other thing this could be is maybe we just are having a little bit of mental fatigue after this pretty big beginning of the week. I can't emphasize enough that the astrology for November, there's a lot going on in November. It's a lot of big culminations and new starts as well. So maybe we're just, it's time to kind of catch your breath and maybe relax a little bit. This would be actually a great aspect to take a salt bath or something in the evening and just kind of sit within your own sensory deprivation tank and go into your mind a little bit, or your imagination a bit, and try to recharge and regenerate before the next set of manifestations comes about, or demands on your time or your resources. Okay. All right, let's look at Thursday. Okay, Thursday the 14th. Thursday the 14th, we are still in a Gemini moon, but this day has an interesting little thing going on called a mutable T-square. The moon, you can see here, is at 15 degrees Gemini. It's going to be making an opposition to Venus at 15 Sagittarius, and both of those things are going to be squaring Neptune at 15 degrees Pisces. And all of those signs or temples are mutable or double-bodied signs. So what do we make of that? Well, this is a time of transition. This is a time of change. This is a time where there may be some competing interests in your life, in those areas of your chart, where you may be feeling that there's many options. Then it's trying to parse out all of the different choices that are before you. Remember, we talked about the sun being in the third decan of Scorpio, being offered all these different possibilities, right? And we kind of have to, to do any one of those things most efficiently or effectively, we can't do everything. And the moon at 15 degrees of Gemini, this is ruled by the card that's associated with it is the 9 of Swords. And in it, you can see a figure that is kind of laying awake at night and having kind of a nightmare, maybe overwhelmed with all of the different possibilities and choices, or maybe you've started something new this week and it's like just trying to get all the details straight is just creating a little bit of anxiety. Whereas Venus in 15 degrees Sagittarius was that 9 of Wands that we were seeing, where we have some resolve to keep fighting and to carry whatever burden we need to hunt our desires and what we want. And then Neptune at 15 degrees of Pisces, we have the 9 of Cups, where we see a figure that is sitting with his arms crossed with the cups of satisfaction behind him. And it seems like he is manifesting some sort of dream, and there's a sense of fulfillment. So this may be like we're trying to get to this Neptunian dream, this sense of fulfillment, but we've got all these options, and we are required to, hunt all of these and take all these actions, Venusian actions, and possibly harmonize. And that may be a little bit exhausting. This is the main thing that we're experiencing on Thursday, is the mutable T-square. Okay. It's important with this that you don't overly idealize your relationships, your vision, that you don't have kind of that rose-colored glasses type of experience. This could be a time of overwhelm too. So what I would recommend, and this is something I've been learning through my own experience with feeling overwhelmed by the dream and my own needing to find my own center and patience with it. I've been reading a really awesome book that I would recommend to all of you. It's called Conquer the Pool. I know it's funny because it's swimming related again, but it's an awesome book. And I follow this guy named Cody Miller on Instagram and his YouTube channel, and he's really an awesome ambassador for the sport of swimming. He's super positive, a hard worker. He makes swimming just look like the most fun thing in the world. Like all the grinding, difficult work that goes into it. He has such a positive attitude on that blog about it. It's just wonderful if you have a young person that's attempting to do something difficult. His enthusiasm is really contagious. And he recommended this book, and it's all about high functioning mindset or high performance mindset. And a lot of the techniques to become a high level athlete are really applicable to any type of project or anything that you want to achieve. And one of the things that they really talk about is having the vision, having the goal, having the, not lowering your expectations necessarily, dreaming big, but at the same time, being able to hold the necessary daily steps and celebrating the daily victories and the daily goals that you want to achieve for that particular time set. So it's kind of like, how do you hold the grand vision and the details all in your experience and in your mind almost simultaneously? Okay. You don't always have to be focusing on the big picture. You can have that in the back of your mind and have that as a goal that you may write down and plaster to your wall or something like that. But, choose 2 or 3 things that day to focus on and say, what are the next 2 steps that I need to take to achieve this? And that may help you to feel less of the overwhelm of the grandiosity of what you're trying to do. I know in our particular case, I've swung from everything as a swim parent, from dreaming about having a child in the Olympic Games to like, well, how do you focus on your flip turn today in practice? It's going back and forth between those 2 things, and learning about patience, about the necessity of seeing the gradual progress. I think my daughter in particular has been an awesome teacher for me, because I tended to want to see progress quickly. And when I was doing things as an athlete and as a musician and as in anything, what I would do is I would get very obsessed with what I was doing, and I would dive into it headlong, and I couldn't think about anything else. And I would obsess over it. I had a little bit of an obsessive mindset when it came to learning things. I loved learning stuff. When I decided to study Hellenistic astrology, I received a book from Demetra George, Astrology and the Authentic Self. And that just set off me listening to podcasts from like Chris Brennan and Adam Ellenbaas and Adam Summer and all these really great astrology folks, and reading multiple hours a day and getting a library of like 1 million books and going to conferences. And it was all I could think about for a long period of time. And I tend to be the type of person that will just dive in and try to completely immerse myself in that until I learn it. And then I go to the next thing. And this has been a really instructive experience being a parent of a child who is not like that, of a child who takes things things very measuredly, one step at a time, uh, will not be rushed. And it's a good thing too, because this is where we learn our greatest lessons, I think, are through our children. And at every step of the way, when I get super excited about something, she's almost the calm voice of reason. And it's like she's kind of starting to gain some of my enthusiasm about things. And I'm hopefully learning from her patience and perseverance and willingness to do the hard, necessary work to make that dream a reality. And when you combine those two things, you will become a champion, and you at whatever you do. And I think that it's just a really neat thing to experience. I'm really grateful for it. I'm really grateful for the learning experiences. The last few months have been a little difficult. I've experienced some humbling things as a parent, and as maybe even overstepping a few of my own limits, and getting a nice little course correction from the universe. And maybe you all have experienced that too in various areas of your life, if you tend to rush into things. And you just have to embrace it. You just have to embrace it and learn from it. And I think that that's really how to navigate this mutable T-squares. Try not to get too overwhelmed with your passion, your enthusiasm, and all the options, and realize that whatever you're shooting for, you're just going to have to take the necessary daily steps to make it a reality and to manifest it into form. And you can do it. You can do it with a good support system, with a good inner fire, with a good ability to take the time to recognize your little victories along the way too. Just an update on her swimming. She had a conference meet or division meet at the end of her high school, and she won all of her individual heats, her individual events, and won one of her relay events too. She didn't win the overall thing. She didn't get first in the whole thing, but she won her race. And that's a big step up from what she was doing even a year ago. And she looks 1,000 times better. And that was a lot of hard work that went into that. I'm super proud of what she's been doing. And like I said, hopefully by me sharing some of those victories, those little victories, hopefully that's inspiring to you to celebrate the small steps along the way. Because I don't think we do that enough. I think all we see is the big goal, and we don't take the time to celebrate all the small victories along the way. And I think that we would feel more motivated to keep going if we did that. Another thing that this book really speaks about is motivation to start something. Or motivation, you don't just start something when you feel motivated. You don't just do something when you feel motivated. Starting something brings motivation. And I thought that was such a wonderful thing to think about, was if you can find the perseverance to start something, once you get rolling, you'll feel more motivated as you go along and as you do it, because you'll see some of the results of that starting. So that's my other little tip from that book, Conquer the Pool. I believe you can get it online. I don't remember the author, but he was a high-level swimmer, and he's a motivational speaker, and just really, really well done. All right, more astrology. Friday, 11/15. We have, those are our main non-lunar aspects, so we'll just speed through the lunar aspects for the rest of the week. Moon's going to be moving into Cancer on Friday, gaining dignity by domicile and by triplicity. Excuse me. This is the last day of our full moon, 45-degree full moon phase. On Friday, we're going to see an opposition of the moon to Jupiter very early in the morning at 26 degrees, Gemini and Sagittarius. It's then going to trine Mars at 6:40, still in Libra. And then the moon's going to be sextiling retrograde Uranus at 3 degrees, Cancer and Taurus. So, you know, a little bit, maybe these days are going to be into the weekend. We're going to be having a little bit less of the big kind of aspects, the more longer term aspects. And we're just going to kind of be seeing how these things are going to be playing out. We may be reflecting on how we're going to, what our next moves are going to be. Saturday the 16th, we're going to begin our crescent phase of the moon cycle, where we're going to be trying to mobilize the resources. I'm sorry. No, that is not correct. Sorry, my notes are incorrect. I got Mercury retrograded. This is actually the disseminating phase. The crescent phase is the lead up to the full moon. No. Sorry. The crescent phase is the phase right after the new moon, where you are mobilizing resources to the new impulse that's happening. The disseminating phase is the phase directly after the full moon, where we are taking the realizations that we have gotten from the feedback that we get from the full moon, and we are putting it into action. We are sharing it. We're sharing what we've learned. We are taking action out in the world. We're spreading the seeds like Johnny Appleseed of whatever fruit that we discovered at the full moon. Okay? So this is like we're finally able to eat the ripened fruit that we've planted as a little seed at the new moon. If you were wondering, the phase right before the full moon is called the gibbous, the waxing gibbous phase. Okay, cleared that up. The moon will be making a trine to retrograde Mercury around 11:08 a.m. at 13 degrees of Cancer and Scorpio. It will be trining retrograde Neptune at 15 degrees in the afternoon, and then making an opposition to Saturn at 5 o'clock. So really the difficult one there is the opposition to Saturn. Yes, you may have to this may bring about something where you're reviewing something that you started when Mercury was direct at around 15 degrees or so, or 13 degrees, sorry. Something may have to be redone around that period of time. But, it's a trine, so it maybe you catch something, you catch a detail, and you finally are starting to unravel it a little bit. With the opposition of Saturn, there may feel like there's some kind of blockage, again, that we have to work out, some kind of negotiation, perhaps between your domestic life and whatever you're trying to do out in the world of structure and form. This could be maybe you have a new project you've initiated, but you got to make a negotiation with the family before you go out and do more things out in the world. And those can be tough conversations sometimes. You may come across the limitations that you have. On Sunday the 17th, the moon is going to move into Leo later in the day, around 5 o'clock or so, losing some of that domicile dignity. And then we're going to have the moon's opposition to Pluto at 21 degrees. So if I see it, my chart here, here's our opposition here with Saturn on Saturday and making the trine to Neptune, okay, and the trine to retrograde Mercury. It's almost like a grand water trine happening between the moon, Mercury, and Neptune. So that might be an interesting day. And then on Sunday here's that opposition with Pluto at 21 degrees or so. It's already past it in this chart, but you get the idea. Very early in the morning. So it may be, some of the limitations we come across, maybe bringing up some sort of power dynamic or power challenge too. Whenever we have a lunar opposition with Pluto, it's bringing up some stuff from the depths to be dealt with and to be processed. It's a nice processing aspect. I don't know if it's nice necessarily. Oppositions are of the nature of Saturn, so it may be necessary. There may be some necessary processing of things that we have maybe become corrupted or need to be reborn and redone or regenerated, and that unplugging of something that's been kind of stuck or corrupted. In the morning, we'll have the trine between the moon and the sun at 24 degrees of Cancer and Scorpio. And then we have a couple of challenging squares towards the end of the day, with the moon squaring Mars at the very last degree of Libra, 3:14 in the afternoon. So it's the last gasp of Mars in exile, some last crappy thing that we have to deal with before Mars gains some dignity into Scorpio. So watch out for that. And then, you know, later on in the evening, the moon will be making a square from Leo to Uranus retrograde in Taurus. So again, try not to get too stubborn or fixed in your position if there's some kind of conflict that comes up, that last gasp conflict between the Libra and Cancer ruled areas of your chart. Okay, got it? All right. All right, looking ahead for the 18th to the 24th, we're going to have a first quarter moon on the 19th. Mars is going to be ingressing into its home domicile of Scorpio. Yay, 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 yay. For some of you, that'll be really good. I think for everybody, it'll be just a more effective Mars in general. I'm celebrating because Mars is my perfected Time Lord of the year, which means that it is kind of a very important planet for me and for anybody who is in a Scorpio or Aries profection year, which was a Hellenistic technique that talked about one house of the chart being activated for a particular year. So when your perfected Time Lord gains dignity and goes out of its exile, it's probably a pretty good thing. So that's why I'm having a little mini celebration there. You know, Mars is still a malefic though, so it doesn't, there could be some severing or cutting type of qualities that still happen. It may still be a little bit of a spicy boy, but it may be working much more directly. It's going to be a lot less like passive aggressive, and you might be more able to stick up for the things that you really want and pursue the things that you want more directly, and defend the things that you want without having to go through all these like back channels and backbiting and stuff like that. So a much better Mars in the sky. Mercury is going to be stationing direct on the 20th next week at 11 degrees of Scorpio. So we'll be unraveling some of the retrograde things there. The sun is going to be ingressing into the sign of Sagittarius, sitting at the table with Jupiter and Venus. That'll be nice too. That'll be a nice little boost before Thanksgiving. I personally love Thanksgiving. I like eating. My lady is a wonderful chef, so I'm looking forward to, we like to smoke a duck for Thanksgiving. Kind of not traditional, but super tasty. Anyway, and then we're going to be seeing the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter on the 24th, which is a very nice aspect that is going to be balanced out by the challenging aspect of Mars opposite Uranus. So like that, it's going to be something really great and something really like, whoa, that's crazy happening on the same day. So I'll talk about that more next week though. But if you are enjoying these videos, make sure that you give a like down there. That really helps the visibility on YouTube. Share it with your friends. If you want to support further episodes of the blog, the video blog here, I have I don't have a Patreon account yet. I should start one, but I have a Venmo that you can make a donation, or PayPal me. That's much appreciated. Put a lot of time and effort into these videos. So if you like what you hear, you know, a couple bucks goes a long way. Just tells me that you care. But anyway, I hope you all are having a good week and that you are having a good full moon and Mercury CAZIMI week. And we will see you the next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.